morning everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nina and this year I'll be starting with my third year of vet school at Onderstepoort campus here in South Africa. And today is part 2 of my two-part video about all the modules that I had in second year. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, please go check it out. That video covers all the modules that I only had for one semester. And this video we will be discussing all the modules that I had for the whole year. So let's get started. The first module that I had was Pt.2, which is animal management. And it was a bit of a difficult module, not because of the content, but just because this was the first year that they had that module. So they had a lot of things to sort out, and I think the whole pandemic really messed them up because there were a lot of things that didn't go the way that they were supposed to with this module. A lot of people didn't even know that this module existed. The lecturers were all over the place with a lot of stuff, so it was definitely rough around the edges, but it all worked out in the end. So for this module, you will have practicals throughout the year. And when I say throughout the year, in theory, obviously we didn't have it this way, but it is supposed to literally be throughout the year. So over weekends, holidays, public holidays, everything, you will have practicals for this module. And how it works is when you have practicals, you have to go to campus about an hour before your class. You spend that time going with the workers and taking care of all the animals on campus. Usually you will have to work with a specific animal. So for example, when I had my practical, the first time I had to work with sheep. So every morning we would move them out to the bigger fields so that they could graze, and then we would go to their like smaller paddock enclosure type things where they stayed during the evenings, and we would fill up their feed troughs. We would check that all the water troughs were full. We would make sure that there are no sharp or dangerous objects throughout any of the enclosures. We would also have to check all the sheep to make sure that none of them look sick or have any kind of weird discharges from their eyes or their nose or something like that. There's no lameness, all of that. So basically you just care for the animals on campus. And then usually after classes you would go back again and you would move them back to their nighttime enclosures if you need to. And you would also check again that they have food, water, all of them are fine and healthy, and then you get to go home. It was actually a lot of fun, so you get divided into groups of 3, and then you get certain dates during which you have to do your practicals. So we were actually one of the first groups who had to do practicals. We were the first group, so when we got there, actually no one had any idea what VAP was, but they did know what we were supposed to do because VAP used to be part of VKU, which I discussed in my previous video. So there have always been these practicals, they're just for a new module now, so everyone was really confused when we told them we're there for the VAP practicals because they didn't know that that was a module yet. But we still had it the way that it was supposed to be because it was pre-pandemic. And then I think there was one other set of groups after us, and then campus closed down. So we really didn't get to do that the way that it was supposed to in the end when we had our whole practical boot camp, which I also discussed in another video. But we had a practical boot camp at the end of the year, and then they also had to catch up all the VAP pracs for the students in that time. But yeah, that's at least the way that the practicals were supposed to happen. You go there twice a day and just take care of the animals. The workers are there the whole time, so you're not just thrown in and left in the dark, which helped a lot. The theory for the module was really not difficult. It was just plain and simple animal management. So you would do beef management, dairy management, sheep management, all of those, which is really useful for vets to be able to advise farmers which would be the best way to have optimal productivity while also ensuring that the animals are having the best life that they can and that everything is being done with the animals' best interest in mind. So it was definitely an important subject. We did struggle with it a bit because everything was so crazy because it was a new module and then the pandemic came, so it was really difficult to sort of sort out what was happening and when it was happening, and then there was a whole issue with what was included in our exam and what wasn't, and when we had lectures and when we didn't. So yeah, that was a bit of a crazy module for us, but I'm pretty sure that it will have been sorted out by the time that the next group has to have it. So the next module is VPL 201 and 121. So if you have watched my first year module videos, then you would have heard that I have mentioned VPL. It is Veterinary Professional Life, and the reason why we have 2 modules this year is because a lot of students transfer over from BSc, and then they transfer from there to the second year of vet school, and then they haven't had the first year of VPL yet, so then they just have to have it additionally this year. But it is really such a low maintenance module. We literally had it for 1 week at the start of the year and then never again. So VPL was presented in a block, which is also the way that they present anatomy. And how blocks work is that you have a week that is only that module, and you have no other modules during that time, and then when you are not in the block for that module, you don't have that module in your normally scheduled classes. So for VPL, we only had 1 block, so we had 7 days of just VPL where we had lectures, we did assignments, I think we had 1 or 2 quizzes, we also had a day outing to Freedom Park, and that was it for the whole year. Then we were done with VPL, we didn't have to worry about it again. It is basically like life orientation for vet school. So it's one of those modules where it's sort of annoying, but it does also have really important information that you might need to use later in life, but you sort of could also figure it out along the way. But what I really enjoyed about it this year was that we had video assignments. So they gave us, for example, they would give us a video of a client that is on the farm, and you have to go and look at their horse, and they're really upset that we are late. And then you have to record a video of yourself responding to that client. And then they give you marks based upon, how you react. Do you apologize to the person for being late? Do you offer your help? Do you greet them? All of that. So that was actually a lot of fun, and I feel like that's actually something that we would apply one day. So that was a part of VPL that I really enjoyed. The rest was a bit very, very much like life orientation, but you'll see when you get there. I don't know what they did in VPL 121 because that is the substitute for the first year VPL, but I know that they did do a few quizzes and a couple of small assignments, but it's really a very low maintenance module, and honestly, once that block is over, you completely forget that it exists. The next module is Vet.2, which is Veterinary Histology. So that is definitely one of my favorite modules of the year. It is basically everything about animal behavior and handling. So it is also one of the modules that we had most of our practicals in. It is the module that our practical bootcamp revolved around. So it was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. It was so useful for us. I really enjoyed the theory part, which focuses more on the behavior of animals, also a lot on animal welfare, which is a very important part of a vet's work. And then the practicals would usually be once or twice a week. You would usually first have a session in the skills lab, which is a lab on campus, where they have like a bunch of models of all the animals that you could possibly work with, and then you get to practice all the procedures on them first, and then you would go out to the animals on campus and then practice it on them. We didn't do any vet-related procedures, really this year. We did more like the general handling. For dogs, we did do sort of vet procedures, sort of the different ways of restraining a dog on the examination table, the ways to give medication, all of that. For horses, we only learned stuff like grooming, putting on a halter, leading the horse, checking the feet, all of that. For cattle, you would learn the different restraining methods as well. That is a big part of what we learned this year, actually, is a bunch of different restraining methods for all the animals. Unfortunately, we did not get to practice all of it this year because of the pandemic. Campus was closed for most of the year, so we only had 1 week to cover it, which was our practical boot camp. But I think in general, this is sort of a very nice balancing part of ed school where you sort of get so caught up in all the theory and stuff that you have to do, and then at least once a week you get to actually go out and work with the animals. So it was definitely a very fun and enjoyable module. This was also the only module where we really had a practical exam, and we were so stressed about it because we have never had practical exams before. We were so nervous, and it was actually the best exams that I had. The examiners were so chill, so accommodating. They really take into account how the animal reacts to you, which was something that I was really nervous about because I know how unpredictable animals can be and how moody they can be. So I was so worried that I would get there and I would get this cow that just wanted nothing to do with me and she would just be kicking. So I was really worried about that, and my friend and I actually did get a fairly kicky cow for our exam. We had to put on milking hobbles, for example, and she just kept kicking them off. And the lecturer was just like, it's fine, I can see that you know what you're doing, so you don't have to worry about her misbehaving, which was really great, really helped us out. The next module is VCA201, and that is Veterinary Comparative Anatomy. So anyone has watched probably more than 2 of my videos, then you would have heard me talk about anatomy. If you have ever talked to anyone about vet school, you would have probably heard about anatomy, how horrible it is, how much work it is, how everyone fails it, how it is just the worst module to ever have. And I can actually not really deny most of that. Anatomy was actually one of my more liked modules, but only for the practical aspect behind it. It was definitely the module that had the most stress, the most pressure, that had so much work, so much theory, and so much practicals. It was insane. It is definitely a very stressful, very draining module, but it was also one of the most vet-related modules that we had. It had most of the practical application of what we might do one day. We got to see how everything physically worked, which was so great compared to those hours that we had to sit and just look at all these theory things that we could not even start to put it into motion in our heads until you can actually see it on a specimen. So despite all the pressure and stress and all the negative things that it did have, it did also help a lot. It was definitely one of the modules that I did end up liking, when it was over. Anatomy is also presented in blocks, so you would normally have 6 blocks throughout the year, and then how it would work is that each block is 7 days of only anatomy. You have no other modules during that time. And then they would usually cover one part of the body in each block. So for example, our first block was normal. It was before campus closed. It actually closed literally 10 minutes after we had our semester test for that block. The first block we did the head of the animal, so we would have practicals usually until from 8 in the morning until about 1 in the afternoon. And then afterwards, for the rest of the day, it would be self-study, all the theory parts of that block, how the muscles of the head work, which muscles have which effects on the body, which nerves innervates which muscles, all of that we would have to study in the afternoons, and then the next day we would go back and have more practicals and dissections and all of that. So that's how the block works, and then after the weekend, the next Monday, you would have the semester test for that block. So we didn't have it quite like that. We ended up having theory blocks, which wasn't normally a thing, but we had, I think, 3 theory blocks throughout the time that campus was closed. And then at the same time as our practical boot camp, we had 2 purely practical blocks. So it all sort of leveled out. And then we also had our first block, which was handled normally. But usually you would have 1 block covering the head, 1 block covering the thoracic limb, the pelvic limb, the thorax and the abdomen, and then the last block you do embryology, which is just the development of all animals from basically fertilization until birth. So another thing about anatomy is the textbook, which I have mentioned before. If you have gotten into vet school and you're going second year this year or first year or whatever, just make sure that you save for the anatomy textbook. It is ridiculously expensive and you definitely do need it. It is also luckily a book that I would definitely continue to use even after my studies. It is very extensive, it is very helpful. Also, if I'm correctly, we were told that we would also use that textbook in our 3rd year, so you definitely do get a lot of use out of it, but it is really expensive. I don't know of anyone who got it anywhere less than 4,000 Rand. A lot of people had to get it for a lot more, so definitely save for that textbook. You will not regret it. There is one in the library on campus, but because about 100 to 150 students need to use that textbook all at once, there is only one. It is really difficult for everyone to get to it, so it really doesn't work out very well. So just try to save up and get your own textbook. You won't regret it. You will continue to use it for the rest of your studies. So just make it easier on yourself and get it when second year starts. The next module is Pt.2, which is Veterinary Physiology and Histology. And that is basically two completely separate modules. They're put in the same module, so they count together, but you will never have physiology in a histology test and vice versa, and you will never have assignments that have both components in. It is really treated as two completely different modules. They just end up counting together at the end of the year. So just to basically explain to you what they are, because I took so long to figure out what physiology is and what histology is, and no one could give me a proper answer. So physiology and histology relate a lot to anatomy. It is basically anatomy on a microscopic level. So basically for histology, it is purely the structure. So where in anatomy, you would learn that this is a muscle. In histology, you would learn that this is the muscle cell, it is this kind of muscle cell, it has this kind of nucleus and processes and this and this and that. And then you would also have to learn what it looks like under a microscope. A histological image is basically a microscopic image. Histology is just the microscopic structure of everything. With physiology, where in anatomy you would learn that when this muscle contracts, this part of the body moves. For physiology, you will learn that an action potential from the nerve is transferred to the muscle cells, which causes a calcium influx, which causes the muscles to contract. So you learn microscopically what happens to each cell in order for the big thing to happen, in order for that muscle to move. So physiology is a microscopic function of everything, and histology is a microscopic structure of everything. So they're very different, but they do relate to each other a lot. So usually you would learn the histological part of a structure first. So you would learn what it looks like, all its characteristics, and then you would learn how it works, which is then physiology. For histology, you also have a lot of assignments. I think we got it once every 2 or 3 months. The first assignment we did individually, and after that we did it in groups of 2, and it is the savior for histology. Really, it is the only reason that I passed my exams. So what they would usually do, they give you the assignment, then they would say, for example, this is the assignment for epithelia, and then they would have the different kinds of epithelial cells. So they would say question 1 is cuboidal epithelium. They would list all the characteristics with a diagram. You have to show the characteristics on the diagram, and then you have to put a histological image of that cell on the assignment. So it was so useful at the end of the year. If you did everything right, then you can just take your assignment, go through it, and you can literally just study from that, because it has all the different cells with their names, their characteristics, a diagram of it, and then a histological image. Because also for your histology exam, you have about 50% theory, so the characteristics and things, and then 50% identification. So you really need to know your histological images, what everything looks like on a microscopic level. You have to be able to distinguish between the different cells, which is so difficult. Honestly, I think that I would have done so much better with histology if it wasn't for the ID part. You have to use your imagination to see what they're pretending to show you is there. VPH is also definitely, together with anatomy, the most difficult module that I had throughout the year. So my only advice is that you keep up to date with your work for both anatomy and VPH, but especially for VPH, keep up to date with it, study it as you get it. Don't look at it once and then study it for the test. Study it when you get it, study it for the test, because there's no way at the end of the year that you will be able to study all of that for the exams. But that is it for me for today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that this will help some people who are going to second year now, or who are only still going to first year. Don't worry about it. If you can get into vet school, you can get through. And I hope this video helped you guys. I hope you guys have an amazing day. If you guys have any video recommendations or anything you want me to cover, please let me know. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!